right, let's spend a little time with Billy Collins's Tuesday, June 4th, 1991. And I've taken you to one of my favorite little corners right near, this is where I usually grade papers, but here's a nice slate with Robert Frost's poem Mowing on it and an engraving of a man mowing. Robert Frost liked this engraving that went with the poem. And here's my official town historian's portrait, so this is my little special spot. Tuesday, June 4th, 1991. By the time I get myself out of bed, my wife has left the house to take her botany final, and the painter has arrived in his van and is already painting the columns of the front porch white and the decking gray. It's early June, a breezy and sun-riddled Tuesday that would quickly be forgotten were it not for my writing these few things down as I sit here empty-headed at the typewriter with a cup of coffee, light and sweet. Okay, so two things so far. He is making the day extraordinary because he's writing it down. Otherwise, there's nothing extraordinary about it. He's documenting it. And the poem, like a lot of Billy Collins poems, is about being a poet. His head is empty as he sits trying to write a poem, so he's just writing about what's going on. I feel like the secretary to the morning whose only responsibility is to take down its bright, airy dictation until it's time to go to lunch with the other girls, all of us ordering the cottage cheese with half a pear. This is what stenographers do in courtrooms too, alert at their miniature machines, taking down every word. When there is a silence, they sit still as I do, waiting and listening, fingers resting lightly on the keys. Have you seen these people working in courtrooms? The stenographer sits there, and whenever anybody speaks, it's a sort of secret typing code. The person types a little, types more, and they're just taking down exactly what's said. That's what he's doing about this day. This is also what Samuel Pepys did, jotting down in private ciphers, unimportant, minor events that would have otherwise slipped into the dark amnesiac waters of the Thames. His vigilance paid off when London caught fire, as mine does when the painter comes in for coffee and says how much he likes this slow vocal rendition of You Don't Know What Love Is. And I figure I'll make him a tape when he goes back to his brushes and pails. So Samuel Pepys famously kept a diary, but it would not have been famous at all if London hadn't burned. So he was this great documenter of the ordinary life in London. Then London burns, then the diary becomes this great, important historical document. And you guys know what a tape is? It's an old way of recording music. You can make your own. Under the music, I can hear the rush of cars and trucks on the highway, and every so often the new kitten, Felix, hops into my lap and watches my fingers drumming out a running record of this particular June Tuesday. And it unrolls before my eyes a long, intricate carpet that I'm working on slowly in my head, bowed, knowing that it is leading me to the quiet shrine of the afternoon and the melancholy candles of the evening. It's an ordinary day that he's making special by documenting it in a poem. If I look up, I see out the window the white stars of clematis climbing a ladder of strings, a wood pile, a stack of faded bricks, a small green garden of herbs, things you would expect to find outside a window, the ordinary. All written down now and placed in the setting of a stanza as unalterably as they are seated in their chairs in the ontological rooms of the world. Yes, this is the kind of job I could succeed in. So it's a poet saying, I'll just write down everything that happens and that'll be my poem. The poem, in a way, is questioning and answering and questioning and answering what a poem is and what a poet should be doing. An unpaid but contented amanuensis, whose hand are two birds fluttering on the lettered keys, whose eyes see sunlight splashing through the leaves and the bright pink asterisks of honeysuckle. So an that a word I couldn't say, is a copier. And the piano at the other end of the room with its small vase of faded flowers and its empty bench. So convinced am I that I've found my vocation. Tomorrow I'll begin by chronicling earlier, at dawn. at time when hangmen and farmers are up and doing, when men holding pistols stand in a field back to back. It is the time the ancients imagined in robes as Eos or Aurora, who would leave her sleeping husband in bed. Now he's going back to an older time, an older day where hangmen and farmers were in their field up early when people dueled 200 years ago. Not to take her and he goes back to classical ancient myth, as Eos and Aurora, who would leave her sleeping husband in bed, not to take her botany final, but to pull the sun, her brother, over the horizon's brilliant rim, her four-horse chariot aimed at the zenith of the sky. But tomorrow, dawn will come the way I picture her. So he's getting into that ancient myth about what made the sun rise. The sun rises every day. There's nothing more ordinary than the sun rising. However, the Greeks took it up and elevated it with myth, just as he's elevating this day by writing a poem about it. But tomorrow, dawn will come the way I picture her. He's the myth maker now. Barefoot and disheveled, very different than a goddess in a chariot. Standing outside my window in one of the fragile cotton dresses of the poor, she will look in at me with her thin arms extended, offering a handful of birdsong and a cup of light. So in a lot of ways, it's about being a poet. It's the birth of a new dawn. Maybe he's saying in our age, this was written in 1995, we document the day in much more ordinary terms. We don't elevate it to myth like the Greeks did in the idea of goddesses pulling chariots across the sky. Here, his goddess, much more humble, barefoot and disheveled, standing outside his window, bringing the dawn. So it's a great poem. It's fun, funny, but it's also serious about what it means to be a poet, what it means to document the day, to document our lives. Do we elevate our day by thinking about it? We should, right? We should. Take the ordinary. The ordinary is worth documenting and studying.